Now, in today's session, the authors will be diving deep into the world of trauma, guilt, and anguish by reflecting on the characters written by them. Our first guest author is an Irish novelist and fiction writer whose debut short story collection, Modern Times, established her as a writer with a distinctive voice. Her short fiction has appeared in journals like The Stinging Fly and The Dublin Review and has been broadcast on BBC Radio 4. Let's give it up for Cathy Sweeney. Our next author is a Norwegian psychologist turned best-selling thriller novelist. Her novel, The Therapist, won her the debut of the year at the Moritz Hansen Crime Fiction Awards. Translated into over 30 languages and headed for a screen adaptation, The Therapist cemented her place as a compelling new voice in adult fiction. Please welcome Helene Flood. In conversation with Cathy and Helena is an acclaimed writer, educator, and theatre practitioner whose work spans across children's literature, biography, and theatre. Author of A Life of Light, the biography of P.K.S. Iyengar, let's welcome our chair for the evening, Rashmi Palkhivala. Over to you, Rashmi.
So welcome to Snap, Crackle, and Pop, which sounds like an ad for breakfast cereal, but is actually the sound of a mind being released from a high-pressure cabin, aka domesticity, just before it explodes. Helene, your books are populated with mundane characters and situations that suddenly erupt into dangerous, life-altering scenarios. They're largely set in the mind, where outer spaces become a reflection of the unraveling. And Cathy, yours are more surreal, dark, funny, a mind that's done with the constraints of domesticity and polite society and is testing every possible boundary. Both your books should probably come with a hazard warning for domestic life. Welcome, Helene and Cathy, to India and Tara Lit Live 25.
Thank you.
Thank you. So in your novels, the domestic space morphs into something almost sentient, a co-conspirator rather than a backdrop. So as Helene writes, we live our lives among ordinary things until suddenly the ordinary stops being safe. Helene, in your novels, the therapist, the widow, and the lover, the home feels less like a setting and more like people you'd meet at a psychiatrist. They have personalities. Your rooms brood, your basements sulk, your staircases hold grudges. So do you see architecture as a way to externalize the mind?
Yeah, definitely. I think all my novels, or in all my novels, I'm very aware of where they take place. Be it an old villa that is being refurbished, where everything has stopped, so that you have to move around, walk on, this like cardboard stuff, and no light switches work, and just this feeling of unheimlichness. Or living in like an apartment building where the staircase is creaking and you can always hear where the neighbors are moving, and there's even a structural error so that if you open the kitchen cabinet, you can hear from the kitchen in the apartment next to you, you can hear what the people are talking about. So this is always very important to me. I think it is important to Norwegians because we spend so much time indoors also.
Cathy, your interiors are very different. The furniture of the real starts to rearrange itself. It's like Picasso, Freud, and you had a threesome, and the baby was Modern Times. It reveals a riotous, subversive mind that makes us unsure whether to laugh or cringe or cry. So do you use the surreal to escape reality or to tell it more truthfully?
Thanks very much for the question, and thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I'm very honoured. I think with Modern Times, one of the factors was that I wrote the stories over 10 years, and I maybe still don't, but certainly didn't at that time feel comfortable to say the word I and writer in the same sentence. And I was teaching full time and running a domestic situation without being too, there wasn't blood on the walls at that time. So in some ways, I think I just had a sense that things do mount up. And I have this in my novel, the kind of Muriel Spark epigraph, and something has to give or explode. So I used the stories perhaps as a space of play, but dark subversive play. And I felt completely free to write whatever I wanted. So a woman could give her husband a sex doll for his birthday, or a woman could find that she was suddenly turning blue. And yes, I think that it's a way of just distilling experience in this very crazy world into stories that in some ways, you find that there's insanity, yes, but there's maybe, I hope, for me anyway, a little sediment of truth there. Thank you.
They are wild. So in a way, both your books pull the rug out from under every form of love. So love in your books feels less like whispers in candlelight and more like a small electrical fire waiting to happen. Romantic love looks unreliable in the long run, but casual sex feels evanescent, satisfying for about 5 minutes, and then the soul wants a full refund. So it's as if love and tenderness were a compost bin that no one had the courage to empty. At first it's rich and fertile, and then it starts to smell like regret. So as Cathy writes, she wanted to leave her husband, but she didn't want to waste the soup. It's funny, but also devastating, that mix of absurdity and entrapment that runs through most of your work. So do you think that this hunger for connection, this constant restlessness, is a modern affliction born of too much choice and the erosion of restraint? Or has love always been an existential con job dressed up in lyrical poetry?
Is this for me as well?
Yeah, for both of you.
Okay.
You start.
All right. I'd probably start by saying I think of myself as a real romantic. But perhaps I am trying to get at something about the commodification of love in our society, and something about the kind of expectations that people have that maybe are quite consumer driven at times, or a tick box list. And that, to me, when I say romantic, I would probably go back to, capital R, Emily Bronte, that there's something totally wild and totally transgressive about actual love. So maybe I'm just finding my way around these kind of thoughts and playing with them. But yeah, I do like a candlelit dinner.
Oh, that's slowly a romantic. I guess I'm not a romantic. Sorry about that. I think when I write, I write psychological thrillers, so it's supposed to be a little scary. And to me, the scariest thing is being in your house where you're supposed to be safe, looking at the person you love, who is also supposed to be a home for you, supposed to be safe, and think, do I really know what's going on in his mind? Is he there for me, or is he not? Do I have someone close to me who is also, harboring dark thoughts, dark plans? How much do I really know about the people close to me? That's something that I find very scary thought. So that's something that I play with, I think, in all my novels. My idea with these 3 novels, which I think of as a sort of trilogy, is to come at that issue from different angles, both from a very young couple, a middle-aged couple, and an elderly couple, and see how that plays out.
So just as a quick follow-up, do you think that female desire is still framed by guilt, even in our supposedly liberated times? And if your books could whisper one dangerous idea into a woman's ear before she goes back to making chai for her husband, what would that be?
Oh, wow. Sure. I think, especially in The Widow, which is my book about the elderly couple. So it's a woman in her late 60s who came of age at the same time a little bit that the like, would that be third wave feminism? Or second wave, maybe, yeah. Anyway, like the 70s, where things were happening, gender-wise, in our country. She's from a very conservative, a little bit snobbish environment, and she marries into a family which is very conservative. So, like, central to my idea of this woman was the notion of someone being, or being part of that time period, but not participating in it. So being kind of stuck on the side, looking at her friends going out and having careers and stuff, and then being, at home, but not planning to be so, but it just kind of happens. And that feeling years later of something that passed her by. And I wanted the husband to be not forcing her to give up her work or anything like that, but just sort of saying, aren't you tired? You don't have to. I make enough money. We're in a very, good situation where you can choose. And then what that choice means. So I don't know if that's the dangerous idea I could whisper in the air of women, other than listen to yourself in those situations.
Yeah, lovely. And I think in some ways quite similar, with just echoing on the notion of choice there, because we live in a world where there's so much choice. And yet when I went to write my novel Breakdown, I picked a character who on the outside looked like she'd made all, the correct choices in terms of the society, that she had a perfectly nice husband and a perfectly nice house and the kids were fine and so on. And the journey that she goes on, which is from starting with herself and out then into maybe society, and beyond that into maybe the breakdown that's kind of there even in the environment, that kind of journey. I think that it's very much about coming to terms with the fact that a lot of those choices were in a very restrictive box. And I'm quite a visual thinker, so I saw the novel as a line, and there's a lot of references to lines and rectangles and squares and so on in it, that she was kind of ticking off, like, I get to a certain age, I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this. But at no point had she, and as Helene said, thought, well, what is herself? What is the human, and what kind of choices is she making for herself? So it's a novel that doesn't have, sorry, spoiler, a lovely redemptive ending, but she has a sense perhaps of being more a person and more relating to other people at the end.
That's not as subversive as I thought your whisper would be, but thank you. So the way you both write about love, marriage, and domestic life, it makes it feel like you're quietly handing women, and women who are otherwise trapped in the monotony of care and compromise and routine, a bottle of kerosene and a matchbox, saying, yeah, you might find some use for this. What do you think drives that impulse? Do you think rebellion in your work takes place in dramatic acts or in quieter, private refusals? Is freedom for your women about what they do or what they finally stop doing?
Do you want to start that, Cathy?
Oh, it's just such a good question.
Yeah.
There's just so much there to unpack. Thank you very much. I do think the kerosene and the box of matches is not a bad idea. But again, when I wrote Breakdown, I really did want to start with a woman who just gets up one morning and it's just the same as every morning. And there's nothing particularly wrong, but she's just feeling a bit rubbish. And she just doesn't really feel like going to work. And she just, instead of going right at her junction, she goes left. And friends of mine use the expression now, oh, we just went left. Because she sets out on a journey that takes her out of herself and looking more at the world. And in very ordinary situations where women spend a lot of time not just for themselves, but for other people, like shopping for themselves, for others, cafes, hairdressers. And she just finds that at every point she should just go home. But she gets further and further and further away from her life. So yes, by the end of it, the match is struck. The match is most definitely struck. But I did want to write the book that coming at it from a point of view that right up until it is, she's no idea that that's going to happen. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's interesting, and I think it's kind of echoing my view of it also in The Widow. I think that this character, who is more my mother's generation than me, and it's also maybe why I found it interesting to look at that. Is this woman who has a driving force in her since her teens, and then in this very conservative family with a slightly scary father-in-law, and the whole pressure of the family weighing down on her, she has to keep it down. And then I think the pressure is still there all the time, and she finds various ways that are often not very good for her to release it anyway. And then, so this novel starts with her husband dying. So he's cycling, and then suddenly he falls off his bike and is dead before he hits the ground, and it's the heart. But then, as this is crime fiction, very quickly it turns out it wasn't the heart. And I think I was also interested in that story because it's a trauma for her. I mean, she lost someone very close to her. She's alone for the first time, ever. But at the same time, it's also some sort of possibility in it. Like, finally she is free. Finally she can make choices for herself. She doesn't have to go through her husband and say, can we buy this? And he will say, oh no, it's too expensive. Like, he will always sort of control her that way. Suddenly she can do what she wants. And that's why I also like the title of this session that we're having, Snap, Crackle and Pop, because it's kind of what she's doing. It's like, it's a force that's finally breaking free, and then the consequences are huge.
So there's something eerily universal about the loneliness that lives inside domesticity, the kind that hides in habit and sameness in the endless choreography of care, and that quiet loneliness of people who do everything right. So are you actually writing about individual solitude or something more collective, a shared, gendered loneliness? Are your books in some sense a rebellion against the emotional invisibility of women's lives?
Wow. I think that I'm loving the word universal, because when I set out to write the novel, I toyed around with it for a while, but in the end I gave my main character, she has no name. Everyone else has a name, because I did see her as an every woman. And I suppose that the motivation, I think at a primal level for me, was we've had all these changes, some of them quite late in Ireland, but a lot of changes, and there's a lot of, it's freedom, obviously, in terms of gender equality. But there's a lot of performative stuff going on, particularly within perhaps middle classes in the burbs, that it must be all nice and right. Otherwise it's not successful. And it's kind of tied into a status. And I felt that this woman, particularly her reckoning, and it's quite a powerful reckoning. She certainly suffers. I felt quite sorry for her at times. That transfiguration of a person is due to the fact that she has to really face the fact that she's been playing roles rather than being real, that she's been like a wife, she's been a mother, she's been a daughter, but none of it really connecting. So I think that the sense there, just, with these things, were that, yes, there was a sense of, there's a lot of more freedom and there's a lot more open conversation, but there's still a lot of things that women don't say to each other because shame doesn't go in one generation.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I think, I really agree with your idea there. I think it's a little bit the same that I'm doing. Norway is a very gender equal country. We always score very high on these lists where countries are compared on that. And of course, there are still gendered patterns, and they're maybe a lot less pronounced because we have a lot of regulations supposed to, and that are, regulating gender equality in the workplace, in the family. We have a lot of types of financial support for women, like maternity leave. Like you can be at home with your child for almost a year and get reimbursed for it.
Paternity leave as well.
And paternity leave as well. So we have a lot of that, and at the same time, there are, as you say, there are these unspoken things that are still there, and I think marriage, family life is still, it is different for women than for men, or it places us in a different situation. I think we can very often see that when the children come, that does something to gender equality in relationships and also in people's careers, for example. And I think all my three protagonists in my book, the books in my trilogy, in different ways are kind of fueled by some sort of anger or something coming from within that also corresponds to these type of patterns.
So despite the fact that you're from different countries and the stories and the writing styles are so different, I found something that I could relate to in both of them so strongly, and I guess women everywhere must have related in the same way. So that desire for freedom must be very strong in all of us. So snap, crackle, and pop could easily describe what happens in both your books. The mind deciding that it's had quite enough of good behavior. So do you see breakdown, psychological, moral, emotional, as a collapse or a jailbreak, or just clarity turning up in an outrageous outfit? And what does this reveal about how women are allowed or quietly forbidden the loss of control?
Yeah, I got the title straight away, with the idea for the book, because I thought it was such an interesting word. Going back to kind of R.D. Laing and the idea that perhaps the craziest thing would be to be sane in a mad world, and that maybe a breakdown might also be a breakthrough, but also that it could be applied outside of the single character and into the society as it exists in 2025. So I thought I like words that you can walk around the word and it's going to always give you more. But I do think, yes, that like with a character like that going on that journey, I'm leaving that to the reader. I mean, the book. When I wrote my first novel, you had no idea that anyone would ever read it. No idea. And the most gratifying thing for a writer, I think, is that somebody would read their book. Now, what the reader takes from the book is absolutely theirs, not mine. And I was delighted that the book caused quite a few very rowdy and lively book club discussions, because I think that's good. I was happy with that. A little bit of controversy with it, because I don't. It's not a message book. There's no redemption here. It is a book with a little bit of extreme in it, because I was trying to get at a lot. And this woman's journey was kind of going to take me there. But certainly at the end, I feel that there's a bit of humour along the way as well, and even if it's black, and also that there is a sense of like the invasion of beauty, that she's seeing the world differently at the end, and it's a hard price sometimes for those kind of small things. So yeah, maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's not. I don't know how my character continues to live. Not yet.
I think I'm interested in crisis, because a crisis is. I mean, in all three of my books, there's a murder, and it's someone. It's always a man who's killed. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know what that tells you. But it's always a point of crisis. It's someone very close to the protagonist, and that introduces a crisis into her life. And it's terrible, and it's a trauma. It's lots of terrible stuff connected to it. But it is also a turning point. It also changes something, and it's in a way that's a moment where, for good or bad, stuff changes, and it makes her, or all three of them, aware of things that they might have known from before but looked away from. It's kind of a blind spot. I'm very interested in this stuff that we're willing to look away from, because we think if I look too closely at it, I have no idea what will happen, so it's safer to just leave it there. And then the crisis happens, and you can't. You have to look at it, and then anything can happen. And I just find that fascinating to follow that.
So I'm not sure what this. When we supposed to see the time here?
We were supposed to do that.
Okay.
Someone will stop us if
know
it's.
that I don't see the time. So yeah, so maybe breakdowns are just big breakthroughs with better PR. So both of you use humor as oxygen in dark places. So is humor for you a shield, a scalpel, or the last surviving act of sanity?
Oh, wow. I think jokes are a way for us to be able to approach really dark and difficult stuff many times. Like, it's a psychological way to take something that's dark and be like, if we can laugh at it, we can look at it. And it's also a way maybe to breathe in something that's very, very dark.
Especially,
Yeah.
when you're writing crime.
Yeah. Plus, I like to laugh.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same. I love that idea of the crisis, the rupture, and either coming through, a murder, or just coming on a dull Tuesday where no one expects anything. I think these kind of ruptures they're full of that potential for something, to end up in a very different place that it started, and humor is just so much part of it. The absurdity, I think, for me, like, there's not much that doesn't bring it out. And certainly, when you see the characters going on journeys into like very strange places, sometimes I think I find it funnier than maybe some readers do. But at one point, I think my character, she's been in Wales for about a month. Oh, sorry, spoilers. And her husband arrives, and she presumes they're just going to like have a nice heart-to-heart, and she'll get back into the car and it'll be fine. And that doesn't happen. But due to just it being a cold cottage in the winter, they're sleeping in the same bed, and they almost have sex. And, her thing is like, it's kind of like a baggage reclaim instinct. I thought, that's hilarious. But I think that that's just a very dark, little weird sense of humor that is just part of, I suppose that's part of voice, and you just bring that with you into the work.
Sometimes I feel your humor is pretty unhinged, and it was hilarious to me. But is it the way you are in real life, and and the thrillers? I mean, is it that you're living an unlived life, or is this actually something that is part of you?
I have an extremely boring life. I think everyone who opens up, and because everyone has it, the little box of Unhinged, really it is quite a dull life. But yes, I think that maybe we've a very big tradition in Irish literature of the absurd, running along down from Seamus Heaney to Yeats, and all the great heroes, which I love, are the humour of Beckett. You won't get blacker than that. We've writers like Flann O'Brien. So there's another tradition in Irish literature that really is a little bit unhinged. But no, I have a boring life.
I mean, I think life is quite comical. A lot of the dark stuff is really also quite comical. The Therapist, which was my breakthrough novel, I got the idea for it when I was on maternity leave. So I had a little baby, and he didn't want to sleep unless I was lying next to him in the dark. No reading light, no phone, no nothing, just lying still next to him. So I had a lot of time to think. And then I came up with a murder plot. And again, I don't know what that says about me. But I say it as a joke, but I really do wonder, why was that the story that came. But I think the therapist is first, or in the beginning, it is a story of a woman whose husband goes missing. So everything is the way it should be until his friends call and say, well, he didn't arrive at this cabin trip that he was going to. He is completely absent. You know, like nobody knows where he is. He doesn't answer his phone. And it's this feeling of like, is this normal, or am I falling into something completely different and what is not normal and a full crisis? And I wonder if part of being a new mother is also that you're, you know, like skinless in a way, we would say in Norwegian. Like I felt like I had my nerves outside of my body. I have this little life, and now I have to protect it, and I don't know if I can do. You know, it's full of emotions that way, and so maybe that's why this story of loss was what came to me. I don't know if that's unhinged or not.
Is your son aware that you thought up a murder mystery while he was lying in your arms?
I mean, he's 11, so we'll get to that at some point, but.
So if one of your protagonists accidentally wandered into the other's world, what would happen first, do you think?
Into the other's world? Oh, yeah.
I had the feeling reading The Therapist that my protagonist and your protagonist would have a really good night out together. I enjoyed the novel so much. You have, in Helene's novel, there was something that I really enjoy, which is paying attention from a female perspective to all sorts of like small textured details that you felt very embodied reading the novel, and that was just a quality that I really liked. So yeah, I think they'd have a great night.
But do you think your protagonist would be happy to have someone come along with her, or does she need the solitude?
I'm going to have to ask her.
So both of you blur the line between confession and invention. Do you see storytelling as an act of truth or a beautifully necessary lie we tell ourselves to stay coherent?
I'm on the liar side of this, I think.
No, but it's so based in truth. It's so grounded in domesticity that it feels absolutely real.
I think the best lies are, you know? The best lies are the ones who are true within the framework of the lie. No, I think that you can, I mean, you can obviously never split humanity into a crude dichotomy because we are more complex than that, but and this is my hypothesis, and feel free to agree or disagree, both of you, if you do, but that writers tend to focus either on putting language to experience or on being storytellers, like inventing stories. And I find myself, I mean, I love language. I have this little notebook where I note down, you know, nice phrases and metaphors and stuff like that, but I'm very convinced in my heart that I'm a storyteller first and foremost. So that would be my, I'm on that side, yeah.
That's a lovely way of thinking about it. I'm not really sure, but I do know that I taught English at second level for like 20 years before I started writing. And I think that for me, it seemed that when I started writing, I was very much, had 20 years of thoughts about books I'd read building up in me, as well as life. And one of the big, I think, the main origin for a breakdown is in some ways to put your tiny grain of sand on the whole beach of the conversation. And I thought of Anna Karenina in front of the train, Madame Bovary, arsenic, what happens to Nora after the doll's house, and you know, you can kind of go on and on here. you get the theme. And I thought, oh, I would really like to take one of these, you know, middle-class women who go rogue and see what would it be like for her to just not die.
Oh, that's excellent.
So you write from Norway and from Ireland, places where silence is practically a national language. Do you think patriarchy simply changes its accent, or does it behave differently in each culture?
Oh, that's a big question. I mean, it's hard to say yes or no to that, or to fall down on one side. I think, as I touched upon before, that when it's when you have, you know, stuff on paper, that changes. I mean, I really do think that work-life regulation or support for maternity leave or things like that really do matter. And I'm married to a French, so I speak a lot to French women who have completely different things for maternity leave, for example, than we do in Norway. I think this matters a lot, and then I think there are just some undergoing lines there that are kind of constant. So when I'm not writing, I'm a violence researcher. So I do, yeah. So I do population studies on the prevalence of violence and abuse. We actually have quite high levels of that in Norway, and people are often shocked. Like,
Is it against women largely, or?
Yeah, I mean, there, like intimate partner violence, we will see, especially the milder forms of it, we will see pretty similar levels among men and women, and then the severe violence is much more common for women, and sexual violence is much more common for women. And journalists in Norway are often surprised when we come with our numbers. They say, I can't be that high, you know, because I don't know anyone who, and we say, yeah, you do. You just don't know that you do. But this is something I think that surprises people, and then at the same time, I mean, it's everywhere a little bit.
So maybe is that where the anger comes from, and that you kill all the men?
I mean, maybe, yeah.
It's a fascinating and very big question, and I don't really have any particular answer to it, but certainly in Irish history there's been a lot of big step forwards in terms of gender equality in a short period of time, which is wonderful. But you're talking like very quick. You know, so my maternal grandmother would have had 11 children. You know, so it's very quick, and our abortion regulation has changed, you know, only in the last few years. So that my instinct tells me somewhere that when you change legislation, it's fantastic, but it doesn't. There's no, you don't guillotine between, like, the culture doesn't change overnight, and I think there can be some shape shifting that it's maybe interesting to just look out for. That you can still have. You can still have issues taking, like wearing a new dress. And I think that some, in my experience as an educator, both in second level and then in recent years in third level, and some of the conversations I've had with the younger women, I don't think it's like a wonderful new world of everyone is out there. And some of the stories, particularly, you know, with new issues, I think they go quite unspoken in terms of what younger women experience. So online and so on. So if anything, you're just trying to, like, not do that hindsight thing that it was all terrible then and it's all great now, and to write a contemporary book that stirred the pot now. I was kind of happy enough to do that. Thank you.
So, Cathy, you came to writing pretty late. So what was the precipitating factor that brought you there? What was it that made you feel like you needed to put your own stories down on paper?
Thank you. It's a lovely question. I think I'm just a late starter, apart from anything else. I just loved reading. And I think the real answer here is, if you really love reading, it satisfied me. You know, I read as a child. I was always like hiding away to read, studied English, taught English. I think that when I experienced a marriage breakdown, it wasn't a particularly interesting one, but I do think that it made me rethink story. And whose story is this? And what are the stories? And once I got that question in my head, I'm still fascinated with it. And then it threw me onto the page in that wonderful way. That sometimes, you know, it's the right stage in your life, and once I started writing, it became a little bit of an obsession. Obviously, it's still with reading, and I would still pick reading, but I couldn't stop. Sorry.
But were you, if I can ask, were you always, like, was that the first time that you tried to write fiction, or did you do it when you were younger and then put it aside? Oh, really? Wow.
Were you
What about
writing?
you?
Yeah, no, I've always written. Like from when I learned how to write, I always wrote stories, and it wasn't that I knew that I would be an author. I didn't think you could live from being an author, so I figured I would go ahead and get my education in something else. But I've always done it, and it was. I remember it as being a little bit. I was a little bit ashamed of it or embarrassed about it when I was younger. Like I would. Sit in the basement. My father would have this old computer. I would sit and type up little stories, and if my friends called or even my family, I would be like, "No, I'm just, doing." I wouldn't say like I'm writing because I felt like that was a weird thing to do. But yeah, I always did it, and then at a certain point, I just thought maybe I'll send it somewhere and see if I can do something about it.
So when we were in there, you were talking about your writing process. Would you like to share a bit about your writing process, both of you?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, I think it's very interesting where ideas come from. I don't particularly know it, but it's like for me, I would see something happening and I would think, what if it was a little bit different? And kind of twist reality, like what would happen then? And then be interested to follow that to a conclusion. And that would happen many times, and many times the idea will just go away, but sometimes it sticks with me, and I'm in this type of state of mind where everything I see, I will be like, oh, I wonder what my character would think about. What would my character think about this crowd here, or being on stage in India, or, I would try to test everything to see if I could put it into a story, and that's just great place to be. I think anything's possible. No one has read it or criticized it yet. So I could just, let every flower bloom and just be happy about that. And then write very wild. And then afterwards, it's editing, which is necessary and makes it better, but it's not as liberating, I think.
That's lovely. Yeah, I think I'm a very visual person. So generally with short stories, it's an image. And they just, I was going on the train to work one day and I just wrote a story, like literally just scribbling it into my notebook, standing in the corner, about a couple that had a kind of electric chair that they took turns in. And I remember being in the supermarket and just like not being able to stop looking at the amount of oranges, and just wanting to write a story about a man who couldn't stop buying oranges and bringing them home and filling the apartment. Now, that just doesn't happen all the time, but I think that it comes from just one image, and I tend to go from there. But in terms of just process, there's the images, there's the scribbling in the notebook, there's the feeling, of just an idea coming, and then, you have to kind of sit down and write it. And I tend to be quite bright in the morning early, and absolutely useless for most of the rest of the day. So I have to kind of catch those hours, or else it just doesn't really happen. So I don't know if anyone relates to that, but
I relate to that.
There's a window.
So do you think is there a story that you're really longing to write, but you feel is too ambitious for you, that's stuck in there and will come out at some point, but you're not ready for it and the world is not ready for it yet?
I think I have many stories like that, and for me, I feel that writing is a space where I can do whatever. Publishing is something else. So I separate writing and publishing. When I write, I'm completely free, and then I don't have to publish everything. And so for me, it's often a test. I see that somewhere between 12 and 30 pages, it's my breaking point. So if I lose interest there, then it wasn't meant to be. Yeah, or that's a story I cannot write, or certainly not now. But if I go past 30 pages, then I'm onto something.
Oh, that's lovely. When you were saying that, it was definitely affecting me, because I feel like that about the novel I am writing, that I'm not sure if I can do it at all. But I think there's the excitement in that. It has to feel, you're not sure if you'll get there. I think there's an energy there, there's a tension. And I'm writing a novel now that I'm hoping to finish quite soon on Oscar Wilde. And just as you get to the point where you're nearly finished that, you start maybe getting the sense of another novel. So I think that, you'll always want the one that is perfect. It's perfect because you haven't written it yet.
Yeah.
Are we running out of time? Okay, I'm not quite sure what's happening.
Oh,
Oh,
2
okay.
minutes to cue.
So I'm going to open it up to you guys. I've monopolized them long enough. Any questions? Do we have a mic for anyone in here? No questions?
Yeah, there is someone there.
Someone at the back?
Do you think writers today have more freedom or more pressure than before?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I would probably say a bit of both. We've more freedom. That cannot be overstated, how extraordinary it is to live in a moment when you don't have to censor yourself on the page. And that's how, I feel in Ireland at the moment writing. But secondly, the pressures are huge because, as Helena has said, writing and publishing are so very, very different. And it's not really possible to have writing as a job that would bring in money that you could live on. I think those days are gone. I love going back and hearing the stories about writers in the 1950s in America, like buying houses on short stories. So there's a lot of pressure. You have to really have a passion for what you're doing to kind of keep going with it. But so it's both a lot of freedom, but also I think pressures as well. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think I second that. And then I think it's so because of a lot of these things, like the money bit of it, for example, like you say, you cannot live from it. And you see these people sometimes think that you can, and you see movies where a writer will live in a suite trying to finish his novel. What writer is that? But I'm always so thrilled to see that people do it anyway, and people choose to spend so much time and energy on it, and it's like it's something that's coming from inside. So it's not about the money. It's not even about the recognition. It's about this need to express yourself, to tell these stories, and that's just such a lovely thing to see, I think.
Hi, both of you. Very engaging conversation. I just want to I have two questions. One, do you have sort of discipline in writing in terms of I need to turn out a certain number of pages every day, or do I have to be at the table for a certain number of hours? And the second question is, do you sometimes just want to get away from writing? And then, sort of recharge and come back?
I think I had this image of the writer sitting on a terrace in front of the sea, maybe a glass of wine late at night, writing. And then I'm like you, I write best in the morning, cup of coffee, and just in front of whatever. Just like I really, even if I can harbor romantic ideas about writing, I think that my best work is done early in the morning under very unromantic circumstances. And I definitely believe in allocated time, and as going at it like I'm going at my other job, including sitting there the times that it's boring and you don't get to where you want and you feel like everything you do is really bad, and to not be like, oh well, I guess I'll go do something else. No, to stay there and to keep writing, and then something often happens, is my experience, and then you can take away the bad stuff afterwards. I have another job. I'm also a violence researcher. Yeah, so I do 1 week of each, which works really well for me when it works, and when it doesn't work, I have a lot to do. But I'm sorry, what was your other question?
Do you sometimes feel the need to get away from writing and come back to it? But this is partly answered by your alternate week, right? Because you do something else for a week, and
Yeah.
then you're probably yearning to go back to the first one or not.
Yeah, and then I think like periods in my life where I've thought, oh, I lost it, like I don't have any ideas anymore, and I can't do it anymore, and then I've always experienced that it comes back. So more and more I'm trusting that, okay, if I don't feel it now, I'll write anyway, and eventually I'm going to have it back.
Yeah, that's a lot the same. And I've not, at the moment I'm writing full time, but that's for a short period of time while I finish this novel, because, I'm all built up and ready to do it. But outside of that, then I'll go back and, I've stopped teaching at second level, but maybe doing some creative writing or giving a lecture or various other things. And I think that is what adds to the writing. And I mean, the experience of this week here now, this is, so extraordinary for me. I never thought, when I was teaching away that I would have an experience like this, and I'm so honored to have it. And to come to India, I feel that I'm very grateful to writing, to having made my life bigger. Thank you.
Ah, yeah.
Thank you for an engaging conversation. This is lovely. As a woman, I want to know, when you write for your female characters, do you feel vulnerable if your writing draws from your own personal experiences as a woman and as you interact with other people, or you would want to separate that and let your writing come from your imagination? So I want to know, is it vulnerable for you to put yourself out there and it come from your own personal experiences? Or is that not a thought at all?
No, I think it's a very, very, very important one. I really like it. I would say yes. And I think there's great power in vulnerability. As in, we can only, any of us, write from our own life, but our own life is a composite, of so much. Everything we've read, everything we've seen, everything we've thought, our imaginations, how other people have affected us. So I think that in some ways, although it can be personal, it's weirdly impersonal as well, because there's that transposition of thoughts, feelings, desires, experiences into words. You have to package this. You're trying to make the words do something. You're not having a conversation, it'd be nice to, over a cup of coffee. You're making something. And it's that act that is the impersonal bit. So that once the work comes out, I'm quite happy to put everything into it, including vulnerability and experience and so on. But I feel quite distanced from it. Sometimes I have to reread because I can't remember I wrote it.
I think that's very true, that there is great power in vulnerability, and that has to be there for it to be good also. Like if you don't risk anything by it, then what's the point in a way? I think I went out very hard here before and said that I was team lying, and I kind of stick by that. Like I don't write very close to life plot-wise novels. However, I think a writer's instrument is always his or her psychology, like your cognitions, your emotions, your perspective of life, your experiences, your hopes and dreams for your future. You can use this in many ways, but it will always, because I'm making up that world, it's in a way inseparable from my psychology. And I feel, especially after having published several novels, that I can see that I have some themes that come up all the time, and some sort of dilemmas that I keep coming back to, and that I feel can be a little bit like I'm exposing probably something of myself that I'm not entirely sure that I don't see it, but if you read all my stuff, you might see it, and that's a very scary thought. but again, yeah, if you don't risk anything, then what's the point?
Someone else at the back there?
Oh, there's someone there.
Hi. Very interesting views. Just sidelining on that, this is the world which is evolving for women, and we have observed many times that many women are not supporting women who grow. There are still people or families who support old views, and they are the ones who are judging the people who are moving forward. What are your views on the same, and are you planning something in your novel related to that? Like, as you have mentioned, man is being murdered or something, but is there something coming up with women being the enemy of another woman?
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah. It's funny you should ask, because I'm coming with a book. It's coming this spring in Norwegian, where I haven't spoken about this book yet, so this is the first time. But I'm yeah, going to do it. Like it has to do with women being, or young women especially, being blamed for the type of abuse that's a little bit gray zone, like sexual abuse. Was it rape? Was it not rape? Was it, it's not clear cut, and the type of victim blaming that comes into that is going to be part of it, which I think both men and women can do for. I always found, also like professionally, I found victim blaming a very interesting topic, because I think it is something that we do to protect the rest of us. So if someone else is a victim, that might make me or someone I know vulnerable. But if I can distance myself from the victim, then I'm not vulnerable. I can think like, I'm safe because I would never do that, be that. And the dynamics around this, I think are disturbing, but also interesting.
I don't know if I have thoughts about that, but I just can't wait to read your book. To get it translated. That sounds absolutely fascinating material. I think that when you say grey zone, and I find in your work it can be quite uncanny. So I love all work that will perhaps provoke you to think in areas that you haven't. So I'm just looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, one more question, possibly? Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll ask it out of mic. So I think somebody's got the mic at the back, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yes?
Just a second.
Sorry.
Hello. Thank you so much. It was such an interesting session. I wanted to ask if there was a point in your life where the way you related to your writing was definitely transformed. Like maybe if I can take an example, ma'am, after the birth of your child, maybe, was there a point like that where the way you viewed your writing or the way you imagined that your writing will be viewed by people close to you was transformed?
I think for me, I just gave a talk at the university about this. When I wrote my third novel, The Widow, that I spoke about a little bit here, I lost my father in suicide 80 pages in. And for a very long time, I couldn't pick up the script. So I had only these 80 pages, and every time I tried to pick up the script, I had this sense of discomfort where I thought like, oh, I can't, I don't want to, not today, maybe later. And I kept postponing it like that. Which was very interesting to me, because I always loved to write. I mean, even if I can struggle with some stuff, I'm not used to resenting a story like I did there, which I obviously connected to my grief and to the trauma of losing a loved one like that. And then when I picked it up, I finished it, and it was such a relief for me. It was very important for me to finish that book, and I'm very proud of what it became. And I also think that grief is, I mean, she's losing a husband, I lost a father, and it's different griefs, and it's not me or anything like that. But I think that tone of grief in it became a lot deeper because of what I experienced. If that's answering your question.
Thanks, Helene. That's really interesting to listen to. And I think that there is something in that whereby, you know, it's the old saying, you know, like no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. And I think that sometimes it's, you know, kind of counterintuitive, but I tend to try and actually write in to the mood that I'm in. So even if it's like something, you know, rupture, to actually sit with it and turn it into words. Maybe that is escapism, or whatever it is. But I've learned to actually slightly harness the moment, because feelings are, you know, they come and go. They're very fleeting, and you want to just like grab it. So I try and, you know, if there's some intense emotion going on or something, just get a sentence or two down, or even a word that will just encapsulate it, and maybe put that in later. So thank you.
Do you use it later?
Oh, I do.
Oh.
Great questions. Thanks, guys. So thank you, Helene and Cathy, for committing arson in our heads. I feel like Freud, reading your books, would have either found enlightenment or quietly resigned. And thank you all for joining us and for collectively exploring why these authors have effectively set domesticity on fire.
Thank you for all your great questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.